Hey everyone, Jamie here from TechnicalCafe.com. Welcome to your 11th Java tutorial. In this tutorial we're going to be talking about the switch statements in Java, and the switch statement is actually pretty similar to the if, and else conditional statements that we talked about previously. So you might be asking why, if there are two similar type of statements in Java, would you prefer the switch statement over conditional, if, else statements? And one of the reasons for that is that if you have many conditions that you want to check for, and we're talking more than just a few, maybe like 20, 30 conditions, you might want to consider using a switch statement instead of regular conditional statements, as it's going to make it look a little bit more organized, it's going to look a little neater on the eyes, and there's actually a couple other reasons you'd want to use a switch statement or an if, else statement, and I invite you to check out the Oracle Java documentation. They have a pretty good tutorial on the switch statement, with lots of examples and other information providing, use cases and stuff like that. So I'd recommend you go over there and check that out. So let's actually get into the tutorial here. So let's say that we want to make a program that when a user enters a number, it spits out the letter of the alphabet that corresponds with that number. So for example, 1 would be A, 2 would be B, 3 would be C, etc., etc. So let's go ahead and use a switch statement to do that. So we're going to first off define an int variable called letter POS for letter position, and right now we're just going to set that equal to 1. And to correspond that position with an actual letter, what we're going to do is create a string variable and call that letter, and we're going to set that equal to a null string for right now. So let's go ahead and create our switch statements so that we can start, corresponding these together. So we're going to say switch, follow that with a set of parentheses, and then follow that with a set of curly braces. And like with anything, the curly braces is going to be the body of the switch statement, so let's drop that down. So what's going to go within the condition here of the switch statement? That can depend on how you want to set it up, but in our case what we're going to be doing is basing the switch statement off of the letter of the position of the letter in the alphabet. So we're going to be using our integer here, so we're going to say letter POS. So when the user enters in the position of the letter, that's going to be fed into the switch statement, and then we're going to choose whatever letter that we have based on that number. So in a switch statement, instead of using if, else, what we're going to be doing is using cases. So we're going to have case 1, case 2, case 3, case 4, however many cases you want to have. So let's tab in here and say case 1. And with that, we're going to put in a colon here. And this 1 is going to correspond to this number here, whatever number's in here. So if we have case 2, it's going to jump from case 1 to case 2. It's not going to use case 1. So case 1, and we're going to tab under that and say if we choose letter 1, letter position 1, we're going to set the letter equal to A. And unlike with an if, else, or else statement, what we're going to do with a switch statement is actually include the break statement. And what this is going to do is allow the switch statement to stop running. If you don't include the break statement, it's going to jump from case 1 and also execute case 2. And you're not going to want to have that in most situations. There are some situations where you might actually want to do that. But in this situation, we're not. So let's go ahead and make case 2. And we'll say letter equals B. We'll say break. Case 3. Letter equals C. And let's go ahead and stop right there for right now. So what we have so far is a switch statement that takes in the position, a numerical position of a letter within the alphabet, and it checks each case to see which number has been put in. So if number 1 has been put in, it's going to assign the value of the letter variable here with a with the letter that corresponds to the number. So for example, number 1 is going to be A, number 2 is going to be B, number 3 is going to be C, and we can write this out all 26, but for this tutorial we're not, just to save time. So let's go ahead and create a system.out.println statement underneath the switch statement. And what we're going to do is print out the value of the letter that was chosen. So if we come over here and run this, you'll notice that A comes out. And the reason that A was printed to the screen was because we had in the integer variable letter position, we had the number 1. So when that number got fed into the switch statement's condition here, it was checking for whatever case was case 1. For example, if we had case 2, let's go ahead and run this, you'll notice that we get B. And if you remember here what I was saying about the break statement, which I actually left off of this case, if we leave off a break statement, what's going to happen is it's going to run case 1, or if we set this to 1 actually, just to show the example, it's going to run case 1, so it's going to assign the letter variable to be A, and then without the break statement, it's actually going to then go ahead and assign B to it, so it's going to run case 1, then the case directly underneath it. And if you don't have a break statement all the way through, it's going to just keep assigning it, and you'll eventually end up, for example, if we comment out these, you'll notice that we end up with the case, with case 3, letter being C. So it's going to execute all of these because we never told it to stop executing. So let's say we have, for example, somebody enters in letter position 27, and there are only 26 letters in the alphabet. So what's going to happen? Well, just like with an if, else if, or else statement, there is a default statement in a switch statement, or a default case rather in a switch statement that you can use, and that's similar to the else statement with conditional statements, and that's going to be executed if the case is not found. So for example, we can say default, and we can say letter equals invalid letter position. So let's say, for example, we enter in letter number 36, or 36. There is no 36 letter in the alphabet, so let's go ahead and see what happens. So it's going to check, it's going to go case number 1 is not 36, 2 is not 36, 3 is not 36. So there's no 36. Let's just print out an error message here. We can go ahead. There's no real need to add a break statement to the default statement, or default case rather. You can add it if you want, but it's not really going to serve a purpose, as the default statement is usually the last statement within a or last case within a switch statement. So it's going to only execute once anyway, as there'll usually be nothing underneath it. So please feel free to play around with that. You can add more cases. You can use actually strings here instead. If you wanted to switch it around and correspond a number with a letter, you could say case A, and then set the number. So feel free to play around with that. Check out the documentation that they have here on the Oracle website, and thank you for watching.